Yeah, yeah. Shus Harav, good morning, everybody. So we're supposed to be speaking about how to raise children successfully. I'm sorry, I took the wrong notes. That is not the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me when speaking. Probably the most embarrassing thing happened was about 30 years ago. I was giving one of my first lectures ever. And towards the end of the talk, I said, does anybody have any questions? And one young man in the back shoots his hand up. And I was like, wow, somebody was listening. I said, yes. He goes, what time does this lecture end? That was the most embarrassing thing that happened. The idea of raising children. So first of all, I think that anybody who hears anybody else talk about raising children, you always want to know what their qualifications are. I think that's certainly, what qualifies you to tell us how to raise children. So I'll tell you what qualifies me. About 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I got a call from Hamodia. Hamodia asked me to start writing a column on chinuch in English. So I was very flattered. I said to my wife, hey, Hamodia called me to write a column on chinuch. My wife said to me, well, what qualifies you to write about chinuch? I said, yeah, but they're paying. She said, go for it. Okay, that was the qualification. So, like all struggling parents, I've been in the trenches, and, we've learned from hopefully we've learned from our mistakes. We've certainly made the mistakes. Hopefully we've learned from them. And then maybe about 3 or 4 years into writing this column, I came home one night, and something happened. I don't know, something triggered me off. Was some sort of, I think one of my kids took my slipper, and then one of the kids said something, and the teenage daughter said something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And at a certain point, I just had a temper tantrum, complete with door slamming, yelling, good old American temper tantrum. So immediately, one child went and started doing homework, and the other one was flossing, and the other one got into bed, and everything was, still. And then about 5 minutes later, I had to go down to Mariv. So I come back from Mariv, and I was good kavanah to Mariv, and I come back home, and my wife is sitting on the couch. The house is quiet. My wife is sitting on the couch, and she has a bit of a smile, which she's trying not to say. I wasn't in a great mood. And she's just sitting there with this little smile. I said, what's so funny? She said, well, after you stormed out of the house, Plony, our 10-year-old son, Plony looked at me and he said, and he writes about chinuch. So those are my qualifications. My qualifications are that I've been in the trenches. I'm still in the trenches. And now we're raising grandchildren, Baruch Hashem. It's a whole lot different. With grandchildren, it's a whole lot different. My 3-year-old grandson, 2.5-year-old grandson comes in the house, and Zadie comes over. Come here, kid. I just take my finger, dip in a bag of sugar, and put it in his mouth. And of course, his mother says to me, oh, Daddy, don't that salty. I say, oh, don't tell me what to do. I raised you. Don't ever tell me what to do. Now, oh, he's all sugared up. You take care of him now. So, that's what we're going to speak a little bit about, is the concept of raising children. Be'ez Hashem, you'll all be mothers very soon, and you'll want at least to have a little bit of focus going into this, which is very challenging in our day and age. Before I start, though, I just want to show you, this is a pamphlet called How to Run the Shabbos Table. And this is a pamphlet which is a guide. This is not kiruv-oriented, it's family-oriented. It is for husbands especially, who often come to the Shabbos table, which is the main family time. And often the Shabbos table is a make or break for the family. And it's just a guide on how to get conversations going with the kids, how to communicate, how to interest disinterested teenagers, how to keep the wife interested, and how to keep the whole thing flowing. So I have a bunch of these pamphlets here. If anybody wants afterwards, they're 10 shekels each. You can take them, but I don't want anybody to feel any pressure to buy. Hopefully I'll find another way to support my children. Torah says one of the remarkable things that we find in the Torah. If you look at Sefer Bereshis, in Sefer Bereshis, you look at the life of Avraham Avinu. Everywhere Avraham Avinu goes, he's talking to people. He talks to Sarah, and he talks to Lot, he talks to Avimelech, he talks to Paro. He's always talking. Avraham Avinu is always talking. If you look through Sefer Bereshis, remarkably, there's one person who we do expect to see him talking to, who he talks to least of all. We don't find any record at all. For the first 37 years of Yitzchak's life, we find no record of Avraham Avinu speaking to him, ever recorded in the Torah. The only time he does speak to him that we find is when he's about to shecht him. Before that, we don't find that. And that's a remarkable phenomenon. We've all been through Sefer Bereshis, and it can easily slip past us. He speaks of this one, speaks of that one, speaks of the other one. Yet we don't find anywhere where Avraham Avinu is speaking to Yitzchak until he gets to the Akedah. And then there are two sentences in the Akedah. And both sentences begin with Bini. They both begin with Bini. So one of the ideas here is obviously, and I think there are a few people in the room who are obviously parents. There are a few people in the room, a few more people who are not yet. But one of the first things you learn as a parent is obviously that your children are not going to do as you say. Your children are going to do as you do. And the lesson of Avraham Avinu, did Avraham Avinu ever speak to Yitzchak? I guarantee he spoke to Yitzchak many hundreds of times. There are midrashim that say they learned together in yeshiva. They were chavrusas in yeshiva. So clearly Avraham Avinu spoke to Yitzchak, and he spoke to Yitzchak multiple times. What happened? What's the Torah emphasizing? The Torah is conspicuous in its absence of the conversation. In such a conspicuous absence, the Torah is trying to drive home a lesson. And the lesson is that the communication and the way we educate our children is not going to be as much by what we tell them to do. And believe me, we tell kids a whole lot of things to do. That's not how we're going to educate the children, or at least that's not what they're going to absorb from us. They are going to absorb through the example that we set. And Avram and Sarah raised children through creating an example. It's the example that they set, raising the children, which is going to be raising a Yitzchak. I guarantee you that Sarah Imenu, every night she said Kriya Shema Alamita with him, and every morning she said Moda'ani, and she did the Tilei Sidayim, put a yarmulke on him at the bris already, everything. Yet the Torah tells us nothing about the discussion, the conversation, any sort of verbal communication, because it's not the Iker way that we're going to raise children. It's not the Iker way that children succeed. As my son pointed out when he saw me storm off, he never said a word about any of the columns that I wrote. All he said, he commented on how I was being mechanech them in the home, because that's what he saw. My other son once came over to me. I came home, it was late at night, and my wife was, one was getting a bath, and she was running around with the kids, and I had a very late supper. And I was sitting there at the table, and my 6-year-old son walks over, and I was just sitting there eating by myself, enjoying supper, and he puts his elbows on the table, and he starts staring at me. And I was eating, and I'm like, "Hi, kid." "Yeah, can I help you?" And he's looking at me. He says, at a certain point, he looks at me and goes, "Daddy, do you love to eat?" So yeah, it kind of caught me off guard. I just said, do I love to eat? I mean, we don't love to eat. I mean, we eat because we need to be healthy, and so to serve Hashem. That's always the good word to always throw in Hashem somewhere. But it's some pathetic response like that. But it was interesting. He never came over and said, "Daddy, do you love to learn Mishnayos?" Now, why didn't he say that? Why? The answer is because he saw in my behavior, he saw something reflecting it. We'll speak about that a little bit more. So the first rule for parents is, Avraham Avinu says, L'man asher yitzava, Kosh Baruch Hu says, L'man asher yitzava es banav v'es beiso acharov. Avraham Avinu commands his household to follow him. And what the contemporary commentary says, L'man asher yitzava es banav v'es beiso acharov means acharov through his actions. That Avraham Avinu is going to educate his family, educate his children, and educate his household through his example. They once asked Rabbi Kamenetsky Zatzal how he taught his children to make brachas. Rabbi Kamenetsky, one of the Gedolei Ador, they asked him, "How did you teach your children to make brachas?" Rabbi said, "I never taught my children to make brachas. We never taught them to make brachas. I made brachas. My wife made brachas. The kids saw us making brachas, so they made brachas. We never told them, okay, now it's time to make a bracha. We never tried to educate our children in making brachas. The bracha, the education was the environment, the atmosphere in the home. And all parents learn sometimes we learn the hard way, that the lesson the children are going to absorb is going to be through the devotion and through the seriousness in which the parents relate to Yiddishkeit especially, which is what we obviously want to instill in our children, being decent people, doing chesed, and all the mitzvahs we want them to do. The only way that we're going to have any success whatsoever is if we show the example. There was a hockey goalie named Billy Smith, ice hockey goalie. Years ago, he played for the New York Islanders. I'm from Chicago, so they were the enemy. But he played for the New York Islanders, and he was considered the dirtiest player in the league. In ice hockey, when a guy skates by, the goalie has a big, thick stick, and as every opposing player would skate past, so Billy Smith would take his goalie stick, and he would slash him on the back of the leg, which is the only unprotected part of a hockey player's body. There's no padding there, and he would take it. And as they skated past, if they got too near to the crease, he would take the goalie stick and he would slash him. which made him highly unpopular with the rest of the players in the league. And then when his son, Billy Smith Jr., was 9 years old, he started playing Pee Wee hockey, and of course Billy Smith Jr. was going to be a goalie, just like Dad. So they asked Billy Smith Sr. in an interview, is your son going to be slashing the Pee Wees, just like Dad? And Billy Smith said, no. He said, then why not? He said, because I told my son, don't do as I do, do as I say. I can guarantee you the Pee Wees are limping. Because kids do as you do. They don't do as you say for the most part. One of the roles which many frum women on Jewish mothers through history, I don't know whether it's a tradition, perhaps from Sarah Imenu, women for some reason in the home are in charge of benching. Did you ever notice that? It's the wife's in charge of benching. Chaim, did you bench? Shmuley, did you bench? Bench. No, you didn't bench. You didn't bench. Mommy, I didn't eat bread. That's okay. Bench. You didn't bench yesterday. Bench. Yeah. For some reason, the wife has taken on the role. Right? Isn't that true? I don't know why it is, but that's the role. You bench. Men are in charge of the eating. The wives are in charge of the benching. I don't know. That's a break. So it's a great thing, and you should do it. I only have one question. How do you bench? You ever watch a frum woman bench, a Jewish mother? And again, I'm not picking on the mothers, by the way. I'm just saying facts, because this goes on in my house, probably goes on in your house. When a mother benches, it more or less looks like he said, Moshe, did you bench? I can't bench. Why not? I don't have a cell phone. How can I bench? You need it. So if a mother understands, you want them to bench? Sure. The best way to teach them how to bench is by you benching. I'll give you a more extreme example. There are people who have raised their children by washing their mouth. Some people, a kid says a bad word. So mother washes out her kid's mouth with soap. Right? This is a practice. This was done it was done in the times of the Inquisition and at other times in history, where mothers, you wash out a kid's mouth with soap. But they're always with. I was raised with not in my house. I was raised certainly in school. There was always that threat. But okay, shouldn't you? Frankly, between me and you, if you want to wash your kid, if you must, save it for Lashon Hara. Save it for Lashon Hara. That's a lot more. That's going to happen a lot more often. And if you must go to the soap, use it when the kids. That's much more frequent. Okay, kid said a bad word. All right, 7-year-old comes in, he says a bad word. Now most of the time, the kids don't even know what they said. And by the way, just as a piece of advice, it's a mistake for a mother to lose her cookies when that happens. Because all that happens is the kid says, Mommy, he says a bad word. The mother goes, I can't believe you said that. And the tickle goes flying up in the air, and then what happens, you overreact, and then that's the button to push. So then one night when Daddy's not home, and Mommy's overwhelmed, and she says, okay, Shmuley, go to sleep. No, Mommy, you're, right? And he says, what? And there goes the house is after. So just parenthetically, it's not a good idea. However, imagine the mother goes, okay, kid said a bad word, so the mother washes his mouth out with soap. Okay. You know what the kid learned? The kid learned one lesson, very important lesson. Don't say bad words around adults with soap. Right? Don't say it. You know what the mother should do? You want to drive home the lesson, and you must use soap. You have the soap thing. I'd like to see you, the mother, on an Erev Shabbos. You got 12 people coming for Shabbos, your Mechutanim and their family, the Vulturoviches, and they're all coming for Shabbos. And you're putting in that last, woman is running around the kitchen. She's putting in the last touches, everything else. And then, you're running around the house doing 17 things. I don't know why. This is also parenthetical. Why did my mother and my wife always use the number 17? Right? There's always, for some reason, I can only do 17 things at once. Now, the number 17 somehow must be a, Tov, or is a gematria of Tov. That must be it. So, the mother's running around, she's doing 17 things at once, and it's 20 minutes before Shabbos, and all of a sudden, oh no. And you run into the kitchen, and sure enough, that last cake or kugel or chicken or whatever is burnt in the oven. I'd like to see your reaction at that moment. 20 minutes before Shabbos, I'd like to see your reaction. Woman standing in front. So if you're the type of person who just looks and goes, Gamzula Tova, right? Then by all means, take soap, put on anybody you want, that's fine. But if more likely you stand there in front of the oven, you just go, that woman stomp, give a stomp, and you say something. It doesn't have to be terribly crude, but it's a little less refined than you normally say. You want to be mechanech your children? You won't do it, but you should. Call all your children into the kitchen. Could be Moshe Shabbos after Havdalah, that's fine. Call them all into the kitchen. Guys, I said a bad word. Right? Drink down some soap. That will have much more an effect. Because if you want to be mechanech, you don't have to swallow it. You can spit it out. You don't have to, I don't know the bracha, okay? You don't have to swallow it. But if you want to drive home the message, Drive home the message by doing it to yourself. That may goes much further with children. When the children see what you're doing with yourself, the standard you hold yourself up to. They said by Avram Avinu was taken to task. By the way, you got to be careful when you do that, because then the kids go to school and they talk. And the kids are going to tell their friends, our mommy brushed her teeth with soap. And then the next day you're going to find an anonymous package on your doorstep from the neighbors, with filled with crest. We didn't know things were so rough, So you just got to be careful who you're talking to and who you do it in front of. But if you want to make the impression, the kids are going to talk about it for months. If you wash out the kids' mouth with stuff, so you're not going to say anything. He's just going to say bad words when you're not around. But if you do it in front of the kids, they're going to be talking about it for months. I'm watching this. That's the message. We want it to be a long-lasting message. Avraham Avinu, Chazal say, when he had the guests in the home. So Chazal say, everything Avraham Avinu did by himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided for Klal Yisrael directly. What Avraham Avinu did through a shliach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did through a shliach for Klal Yisrael. So what was the thing he did through a shliach? He said, bring water. Sent Ishmael to bring water for the guests. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do hundreds of years later? HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided water for Klal Yisrael through a shliach, through Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock. Speaking, hitting, whatever he's supposed to do. But the point, the Mefarshim answer, Moshe Feinstein asks us, there's an implied criticism of Avraham Avinu for what he did by sending Yishmael to get the water. But Rashi says openly, why did he send him to get involved with the guests? Rashi says openly, Kidei lechancho b'mitzvahs. So why is there he's being taken to task for doing something which Rashi himself says he was doing lechancho b'mitzvahs? Is that what we're supposed to do? Remember, Moshe Feinstein answers a shocker of an answer. He says that's not how you're mechanech children. You're not mechanech children by sending them to do it. You're mechanech children by showing them how you do it. If you go and bring the water for the guests, that's what the kids see. If you open the front door with a smile, if you do chesed with a smile, that's what the children see. Not that you sent them to do it. That's just mechanical. And then when they get old enough, they may or may follow in your path. Yeah, obviously, parents in a home have to have kids do things, and they're not all, your parents, mothers usually say something like, could you fold the laundry, and something like, if you're gonna do it with a smile. Did you ever hear that at home? If you're gonna do it pleasantly. I don't know. I never thought that was fair. I've seen mothers do things, and they're not always pleasant about it. Mothers also fold laundry. It's not like, oh, good, it's laundry time, right? And mothers are not always in the best mood. I've told my kids, listen, guys, we need the laundry folded. You want to do it with a smile, do it with a smile. You don't want to smile, you want to grumble, but you got to fold laundry, right? You got to do it. And frankly, I'm not a happy camper. He's back when I used to fold laundry too. I've done my fair share. Been about 30 years, but I've done my fair share. And there were no smiling. Oh, good, laundry time, right? The dish is my favorite. Crusty cholpans on Motzei Shabbos, my favorite. Hey, listen, it's got to be done. But if a mother's expecting kids to do it, the way you do it is to showing them how you do. I was in England a couple of years ago, and I met a man. He has a shop in England, one of these open, help yourself, put in the bag and weigh it and pay it at the counter type of shops. You get candy and nuts and pistachios, that sort of thing. So the man told me he's got a shop in the religious community, and a man came in. And, sometimes if you've ever been to Geula on Erev Shabbos, you go into the Garinim and they buy Garinim and all the things that they have there. People kind of stand there noshing while they're ordering type of thing. They're helping themselves, which is not Beseder according to Halacha. My son told me he has a friend who goes around every Erev Shabbos to all the nut shops in Geula, stands with the crowd, helps himself to a couple of cashews, and then he goes to the next one and helps himself to a couple of cashews. He goes to the next one for a couple of pistachio nuts with the crowd as if he's tasting them. So I said to my son, listen, if you're going to steal already, they'll go rob a bank. It's not worth, they'll go to Gehenna for cashews and pistachio nuts already. Go make it profitable for yourself. You're not allowed to do that. That's also according to Halacha. So this guy comes in, and he walks into the shop, and he's filling bags with candy. So the shopkeeper comes over to him, the owner of the store comes over, and says, listen, if you want to taste one or two to see what they are, adults never know because they got all these candies nowadays that have these explosive flavors and all sorts of strange, bizarre flavors that they have. And adults are always, going, right? And the kids, they just love it. And, he says, you want to taste it, you want to taste one or two to see what it's like, that's fine, but don't make a meal out of it. The guy says, okay. Comes back a week later, and again, he's just, eating. Just seeing the guy comes over to him and says, "Listen, I asked you, please don't do that. It's not there for menashing. It's there for tasting. If you want to taste, then pay. You put it in a bag and pay for it." Comes back the third week, and he continues, does the same thing. So the guy says, "Look, I'm not going to make a big deal. If the guy's not a mensch, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. If I'm done." I told him 3 times, that's it. All right, about 6 months later, a little girl comes into the shop. I just troubled somebody made for a cup of water. Thank you very much. Don't send somebody else. Do it yourself. That's chinuch. So a guy walks into the shop. A little girl walks into the shop. A 7-year-old girl walks into the shop, and she walks over and she looks around, gives the shirt a glance in both directions. Looks around, and starts filling her pockets with candies. She just put the stuff in candies. This guy's sitting in his office. He's got a camera. He sees the store. So he comes out and he sees the girl. He says, "Hey, I know what you just did. Get into my office." She walks into his office. Thank you very much. She walks into the office. And he says, "Okay, I'm going to call your parents." So he calls the house. The father comes down. He says, "Listen, you know what your daughter did? She came in here. She was stuffing her pockets with candy. She's stealing candy." The father gets up to slap the daughter. The guy grabs him and pulls him in. He says, "If you slap her, I'm going to slap you. I told you 3 times not to take. I told you 3 times not to take. What do you expect from her?" If that's the message, if that's what the father is doing, there's a kid in a cheder. Was caught by the principal. He was stealing. He took money out of somebody's pocket, somebody's wallet, somebody's briefcase. So the principal, the menahel, pulls him into the office. He says, "Chaim, you're caught red." The teacher takes it to the principal. He says, "Chaim, you're caught red-handed. You're in big trouble." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You don't look too worried." He says, "Nah." He says, "I'm going to call your parents." He says, "Yeah." He says, "You don't look too worried." He says, "I'm not." He says, "Why not?" He says, "My father's going to be proud of me." "Your father's going to be proud of you?" "I'm going to tell him the healing." He says, "Yeah, my father's going to be proud of me." Then why would he be proud of you? So my father always walks around the house bragging about how much he's cheating the Internal Revenue Service from how much he doesn't pay on his taxes. He's going to be proud. Now the father's not going to be proud. The father doesn't want the kid stealing money out of somebody else's wallet. Because the father sees a difference between cheating the IRS, which is you're not allowed to do, but he sees a difference. The kid doesn't see a difference. The kid sees a father stealing, I'm stealing. That's exactly what my father wants. That's acharav. Acharav means that Avram Avinu, by blazing the path. In Hebrew, in modern day Israel, there's a word that's used in off-room homes. I don't know if you know, if you're aware, you probably are. Livater. You know what livater means, right? Be mivater. Mivater roughly means to give in. Be willing to give in. And this is a big word in most homes. Okay, just be mivater. A little kid has a chocolate bar, and somebody took something, and the mother says, their kid's screaming, be mivater. Parents always want kids to be mivater. I always feel, and I write about this all the time, we make demands on the children, which we ourselves don't live up to. We have no right to do that. Father wants his kid to sit and learn all day and do his homework, just sit and learn. The kid's only going to do it if he sees the father doing it. And if you can't do it yourself, what makes you think your kid could do it? And therefore, parents are always demanding the kids how mivater are you, right? How mivater are we? Ever see 2 men going for a parking space together? Right? 2 men are trying to, there's a parking space. And I'm sure both just say, no, you take it, buddy. Go ahead, you take it. Right? And it could be in a shul parking lot to go and daven to Hashem to be mivater for us. And yet 2 men might be fighting over a parking space in a shul. A father could be saying, you understand, you want your daughter to be mivater? You want your children to be mivater? Are you mivater? You call your sister or your sister-in-law up and start talking on the phone about how you had some argument with somebody in line at the supermarket and cut you off and you were so upset. I'm so angry, right? And you call up and your kid is hearing you talk, Mommy, why weren't you always wanting us to be mivater? Why don't you step out of line? Do you understand the message that you're sending to your children? In the United States, there's something called subliminal advertising. Those of us who are over 30 years old, back in the day in the movies, they had something called subliminal advertising. I'm being kind here, right? We had subliminal advertising. Subliminal advertising meant when you went to a movie, they would slip in a frame in the movie. While the movie, the frames move very fast, and they would slip in one frame which you don't know that you're seeing because it's moving too fast, and it registers on your subconscious. So in the middle of a movie, you could be cowboys and Indians, and all of a sudden there's a big box of Milk Duds shows up, right? I guess that's the name of an Indian chief or something, Chief Milk Duds. But all of a sudden there's a big box of Milk Duds, and the next thing you know, you see half the theaters out in the lobby buying Milk Duds. because it has an effect on on the subconscious, and people develop a craving for the milk duds. It's so powerful. It's so powerful that it is illegal in the United States to do that. You're not allowed to do that because they feel that they have the consumers at a disadvantage. We are always at a disadvantage anyway. When you go shopping, nowadays when you go shopping, any store that you go into, they are working on your subconscious, and they're working on it not in the most subtle ways. You know, in supermarkets, first of all, they play a certain type of music, which is that calming, relaxing music that gets you to buy more than you really want to buy. And they also pump in smells in supermarkets. You know, are you aware of that? You could be in a supermarket, and just as you're walking down the chocolate aisle, they probably got a camera on you, and they say, oh, there's Goldstein under a pop, heavy on the cocoa, and he's just loading up his cart, and they've got us at a disadvantage. Now, that's happening in areas of material. That's happening in silly things. Do you know what that's doing to the kids in the home? You know what you're doing every time the kids watch you? How they see us, what they see. They had a mother came home from Cheder. We all want our children to love Torah. We all want our children to learn. We want our children to love Torah. I'll tell you a terrible story. You love it. There was a Rabbi in a class, and he said to the class, "Why is it that people?" He challenged a class of seventh graders. He said, "Why is it that people could convert and become Jews, but Jews can't convert out of Judaism?" A hand goes up in the back. Yankee, who never talks in class, his hand shoots up. He says, "Yes, Yankee." He's thrilled with Yankee. He says, "Because if God would allow people to leave Judaism, there would be no Jews left." Yeah, that's bad, right? Yeah. Now, that's a kid who obviously has not had a very positive experience with his Yiddishkeit. A child who feels that way, obviously, there's something that the parents are doing that the parents are trying to, sometimes the parents drive it down, push it down their throats too hard. So a kid is absorbing a message from his parents. He's obviously building up a resentment. Rav Shimshon Pincus Zatzal was what, and this is what we want our children to feel. He was once asked by one of his, I think Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, who was the Rosh Yeshiva, the big Makubal, they were friends. And Rabbi Hillel asked him, "Reb Shimshon, what would you do if one day you found out that your grandmother was not Jewish, your mother's mother not Jewish, and you're not Jewish?" Right? I think we've all had this thought flutter through our mind at some point. What would I do if I wasn't Jewish? Right? What would I do if I wasn't Jewish? And it usually ends up with some restaurant or other that we think, oh, I always wondered what that tasted like. And that's what our thought would be. So he asked Rabbi Pincus, what would you do if you found out you weren't Jewish? Now I want you to think about that. Think about what would you do if you found out one day you weren't Jewish? And you know what Rabbi Pincus said? He said, if I wasn't Jewish, I would build a bama, which is a one-stone altar, which goyim are allowed to build. I would sacrifice on that altar, which is the optimum way that a goy is allowed to serve Hashem, and then I would immediately convert back to Judaism. That's what he said. That was his love of Yiddish. That's what we want to instill in our children. If we want our children to do it, then we have to love it ourselves. And every message that we convey to the children has to be, and it's being absorbed by the children consciously and subconsciously. A kid came home from school. He said, "Mommy, I'm making a siyum on Masechta of Mishnayos." Kid about 8 years old. She went into the other room. She immediately put on her sheitel. She set the table. She put out pop and drinks, and you call it soda, whatever it is, cake, cookie, whatever it is. She said, "Wow, that's unbelievable. As soon as Daddy comes home, we're making a masiba." That communicates the message. A mother then turns to the kid and says, "Well, that's great. Now it's on the table." You know what you've done? You've told the kid that the table is more important than his mishnayos. Now, obviously, kids shouldn't leave things around the home, and obviously, kids should be masudar and everything else. But what do you genuinely love? If you genuinely love it, that's what's going to be transmitted to the children. The Meshech Chochmah was once sitting in and at a certain point, they got stuck. You can imagine the Meshech Chochmah getting stuck on a piece of Gemara, how hard it was. So he and his chavrusa got stuck. They couldn't figure out the pshat. So they got up, and they said, you know what, let's daven that we should understand. So they each went into the corner. They stood there davening for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, they sat down again, and immediately Reb Meir Simcha, the Meshech Chochmah, figured out the pshat in the Gemara. His chavrusa said to him, "Why did you figure out the pshat and I didn't?" So Reb Meir Simcha said, "Well, did you daven?" He says, "Of course I davened." So what did you daven for? He said, "I davened v'hoyer einenu b'sorah secha lehovinu lahaskel, please Hashem, give me wisdom." What did you daven for? Meir Simcha said, I daven that I should have avas Torah. I should love Torah. So Chavrusa said to him, what's avas Torah got to do with understanding? So Meshach Chochmah said, Meir Simcha said, let me ask you a question. Imagine there's a baby in a room, baby's crying, baby's screaming. And they don't know what to do with the baby. So the bubby listens and says, oh, I know that yell. He needs his diaper changed. The bubby changes the diaper, the baby's still screaming. The sister says, no, he's hungry. Sister goes over, she takes the baby, she tries feeding him, giving him a bottle, baby's still screaming. The older brother comes in and he says, no, he wants to have a little fun. He takes the baby, swings him around a little bit, baby's still screaming. Then the mother walks into the room and says, She takes the baby, sits down on the couch, cuddles the baby up, baby stops crying. Meshach Chochmah said this, why did the mother know what that scream meant and no one else in the room knew? The answer is because of all the people in the room, the mother loves the baby the most. If you love the baby, you'll understand the baby. I daven for avas Torah. If I love Torah, I'll understand Torah. If you want children to love Torah, especially learning Torah, that has to be the atmosphere. A wife who wants her children to learn Torah has to have a husband who's going to learn Torah. If you want your husband to learn Torah, that becomes your job, and what you invest in your husband is the greatest form of chinuch for your children. Because the way you're going to influence your children is by how you appreciate your husband's Torah. So if a husband comes home from Kolo, or a husband comes home from a long day of work and he goes to his Daf Yomi Shir, it doesn't matter when he learns, it doesn't matter how much he learns. But a man comes back from a Daf Yomi Shir late at night and his blueberry pie waiting for him. And she says to him, you know what, I'm really proud of the effort that you put into Torah. And not only that, I appreciate the ruchnius you bring into the home with your Torah. That's the best investment you can make for your children. Because if you show, and by the way, we're not playing just, I'll get him to learn by giving him a blueberry pie. You should really appreciate it. By the way, he has to like blueberry pie. But you should really appreciate it. You should really appreciate the Torah enough that you want to do it. That attitude is going to be communicated to your children. That attitude is going to be absorbed. I heard about two girls were talking. One said to the other, yeah, when I get married, I definitely do not want a husband who's going to be learning in Kolo. I said, really? She said, yeah, absolutely not. She says, really? Learning Torah, the most important thing, the kiyum of the world, with the whole world sustained by Torah, the most important thing a Jew could possibly do, and you don't want a husband learning? Why not? She goes, listen, I was raised in a home, and we barely had any money, and every time I wanted something, my mother said, well, we can't afford it, Daddy's learning. We can't afford it, Daddy's in learning. We can't afford it, Daddy's in learning. That's not the proper attitude. And that's an attitude that the girl absorbs. Well, that's just terrific. And therefore, if the girl is raised in that environment, so what would I want a husband in learning for? If the mother says, listen, we have the schus of our father learning, Baruch Hashem, he's learning. It is a little bit of sacrifice, but not much. We're a very happy home. We're a very happy family, and they should be. And you have to make them that way, even if it can't be afforded. It has to be figure out how to make them at least feel you would if you could. That's somebody who absorbs the chashivus of Torah. The way a mother runs a home, the mood she creates in the home. One of the Amoraim said, I never referred to my wife as my wife, I referred to my wife as my home. I don't think he means when he called her that, by the way. He said, hi, home, how are you? He meant that he sees her as the home because she is the home, she makes the home. And whatever you do in your relationship with your husband, that is going to be, whenever I have parents consult me about problems with kids, first question I ask is, how's the shalom bayis? That's the first question. Because that is the most, of all things that children need for emotional stability and health, emotional health, is solid shalom bayis between the parents. If the parents can't get along with each other, the kid's looking, how do you expect that kid to get along with anybody? And therefore the shalom bayis in the home is something that both sides, obviously, the husband has his responsibility, and I speak to men about shalom bayis. The only problem is that when I give a shalom bayis talk for women, about 200 women show up. Give a shalom bayis talk for men, about 12 men show up, 8 of them who thought it was going to be a Daf Yomi Shir, right? And 3 aren't married, right? So that's usually what happens. It's a tricky thing. The ladies all come, but I know what the ladies are thinking all the time. Ladies come to shalom bayis Shir, all the evil, terrible Jewish women who are just so horrific. They're at the shalom bayis. They're all thinking, I wish somebody would tell this to my husband. Right, and which is true, because the shalom bayis is 99% the husband's responsibility. If there's a problem in shalom bayis, it's the husband's fault. It's the husband's fault. Shalom bias. And if it's not, by the way, it's 100%. I just say 99. Give him a little bit. You know, women have their issues too. You know, it's not you're not perfect. But in general, you still have to do your part to communicate that in the marriage. I heard about a couple. Woman baked about 80 rolls for a Sheva Brachas. They're making a Sheva Brachas in the house. This woman bakes about 80 little challahs for a Sheva Brachas. And she goes and, you know, she doesn't have room in her freezer. So she goes to her neighbor and says, you know, Bela, do you have room in your freezer? I baked these 80 challahs next week. You have Sheva Brachas? She says, oh, sure. Now, I don't know why that is. There's never room in your freezer. But the neighbor always has room for your stuff, and you have room for her stuff, but never for each of your own. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those shali, shalach, shali type of thing. So it's mamash l'malamina teva. So she goes over, she puts these 80 rolls in her neighbor's freezer. Okay, the night before the Sheva Brachas, she goes over and she says, Bela, can I get those rolls? I want to start the frost them for tomorrow. We have the Sheva Brachas. She says, sure. So Bela goes to the back room. She opens up the freezer. There are 4 rolls in the freezer. So she goes over to her husband. He goes, Chaim, did you eat rolls in the freezer? He goes, yeah, they were really good. Me and the kids have been eating them all week. And she goes, did you what is that? Women have this ability to yell without making a sound. Right? This is also l'malamina teva. You know, she immediately starts crying, and men have this ability to assume this really unintelligent look on their face. The husband's like, huh? And the wife is like, when's the last time I baked you rolls in the middle of the week? And so she's crying as she goes to the front door, and she says to this lady, Rachel, I feel horrible. My husband and my sons ate all the rolls. She goes, really? Well, I hope they enjoyed them. She goes, aren't you upset? She goes, no, why should you be upset? You know, I baked them that somebody should enjoy them. If they enjoy them, good, I'll bake more, I'll buy more, big deal, as long as somebody enjoyed them. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. I once had a lady in the back room of a shiur, also shiur to women, an older lady. She couldn't contain her, so she goes, what a tzaddikus. Now, I want to tell you something. Is she a tzaddikus lady? She's a nice lady. That's for sure. She's a very nice lady. A very nice lady. You know the tzaddikus is here? You know who could be the tzaddikus here? No, that's nothing. That's nothing. You know what the tzaddikus is? If that Bela doesn't go back to her husband and say, you nitwit, what were you thinking? That's a tzaddikus. The children who see the mother, lets it go. They have an expression nowadays, get past it. Right? Just get past it. It's usually an expression we use on other people. Right? Whenever anybody else has any sort of issue, we say get past it. Our own issues, of course, are important. Somebody else, get past it, like saying Gamzu Latova to other people. Yeah? Somebody bends down and bangs their head on a table. Yeah? Gamzu Latova. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Well, Gamzu Latova, crunch. And then you have a Gamzu Latova fight. Yeah? So you know, is that lady at tzaddikus? Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, not to make a big deal. They enjoyed it. Yes, that's a very high madrega. The real madrega is right over here. That's the madrega. Not say anything. Okay, your husband made a mistake. I believe me, he's never going to do it again. He will never eat the rolls. He will never open the freezer. Right? He will never enter your home again. Right? You have nothing to worry about. He's not going to do it again. You know how the story ends, don't you? You know how the story ends, don't you? She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything. Then about 2 o'clock in the morning, she sits up in bed. You nitwit! How can you have eaten those rolls? Right? I want to tell you something. For those 6 hours, she's a tzaddikus. For those 6 hours, she was a tzaddikus. Because you're restrained. That is all seen by the children. Okay. The next section. And this is something that Reb Moshe Feinstein was asked. And the answer is an interesting answer. Reb Moshe says, just taught you how to make a bracha, right? Reb Moshe Feinstein says, by the way, among embarrassing things that have happened to me speaking, I got a tip years ago from somebody else. He said, never, when you have water, never take water with little ice cubes in them. Because when you're speaking and an ice cube goes down your throat, that is really unpleasant in front of an audience. So I have done it. I did it once. I was once speaking, and in the middle, I don't know why, I just forgot, and an ice cube, it happened, right? Then I went into a coughing fit, and that was pretty embarrassing. So Reb Moshe Feinstein was asked the following. Did I speak here this year, by the way? I did, okay. One of us is suffering from memory. You know, now it should be me, because I'm a little older, so I'm not, And if you don't remember, that's really bad. Rabbi Feinstein was asked the following. He was asked, in chinuch, should parents be lenient or parents should be tough? Should you be tough or lenient in chinuch? So, Rabbi Moshe, in his classic way, he said the first rule of raising children is that there are no rules. First rule is there are no rules. But as a rule, in general, Rabbi Moshe said leniency works better than toughness, strictness, as a rule. Rabbi Moshe himself, his son, it's well known, his son, Reb Reuven, Shlita, made a bar mitzvah for his son, Reb Moshe's grandson. And Reb Moshe at the time was on the Moetzas Gedolei HaTorah. Reb Reuven was making a bar mitzvah, and Reb Moshe was not able to come for the bar mitzvah. His grandson's bar mitzvah. He had what he felt a responsibility to Klal Yisrael. He had something that he had a meeting with the Moetzas. He couldn't be there at the bar mitzvah. After the bar mitzvah, somebody asked his son Reb Reuven, weren't you upset? Weren't you disappointed that your father didn't come to the bar mitzvah? So Reuven said, of course I was disappointed, but I know that my father loves me, and if my father could have, he certainly would have come to the bar mitzvah. So he said to him, how do you know your father loves you? He says, well, I'll tell you 3 ways I know my father loves me. First of all, when I was a child, we used to go to the bungalow colonies in the summer, and I would learn with my father. Once a day, there was a truck that would come in delivering some sort of wheat or something to their milk or wheat, whatever it was. And I liked to ride in this truck once a day. And I would ride. That was my fun. And one morning we were learning together, and the truck came early. And we were in the middle of our learning session. And my father said to me, listen, you like riding on the truck, go ride on the truck. We'll continue our learning later. Number 1. I saw he cared about me, what I enjoyed. Number 2, at our Shabbos table, I was the youngest in the family. We had all sorts of rabbanim, all sorts of dignitaries, all sorts of chashuv people always in our house at the Shabbos table. Used to come, the most chashuv people come to see my father. No matter who was there, no matter who the rav was, no matter who the dignitary was, I always sat next to my father. I always had a seat next to my father. No matter who it was, I sat there. And number 3, in the mornings in New York when it was cold, I would get up in the morning and I had to get dressed. My father would get up earlier. He always got up earlier to learn. He took my pants and he would put them on the radiator and heat them up, warm them up. Then he would come into my room and he would dress me under the blanket so I shouldn't be cold with the warm pants. So that warmth is still there. I know he loved us. And since he loved us, he couldn't come to the bar mitzvah. I understand. Couldn't come to the bar mitzvah. He has a chiyuv to Moetzas. He has a chiyuv to Klal Yisrael. If he could have, he would have. And therefore, I could live with it. A person has to know that in our day and age especially, where children, for some reason, I don't know why it is for sure, a kid who decides that he wants to go off, what they call nowadays kids on the fringe, right? Kids on the fringe, or kids off the derech, or off the D, because derech is such a long word to say, or whatever it is that people use, the kids, whatever the struggles children have, for some reason when children want to get their parents in the kishkes, for some reason they know hit them in the religion. Why that is, I don't know. The first thing the kid knows, if I really want to get my parents upset, I could get them upset by not being frum. I get them upset by not following their path religiously. Parents have to know that in our day and age, kids, in our day, everything is different. There are people in this room who will tell you that they were raised in a completely different way than we raise kids nowadays, right? Now, again, how much we remember accurately, I'm not sure, right? But we remember being, I never spoke without asking permission. And my mother goes, oh, what are you talking about? And I told my kids, I did my chores around the house. Well, you never picked up a broom. You're always playing ball. So we do have these memory lapses. On the other hand, chinuch today, every generation's chinuch is a different type of chinuch. And in our day and age where the chinuch is a different type, there are different types of challenges. So the first thing is there has to be love in the home, constant love. Mothers naturally do it, fathers don't. And a mother has to have your job. You have to keep your focus on what is the relationship between your husband and the children, especially the boys. What is the relationship? The girls anyway, father, girl, type is usually mother, girl, father, boy type of thing. And the men often have difficulty expressing themselves emotionally They have difficulty often showing the love in a concrete, tangible way, and the children are craving for it. I had a kid told me this. Kid told me this. His father is a lawyer, earning over upwards of $600 an hour. He was a lawyer. He was billing. He was working. He didn't get all the money, but he was billing. He was working for a firm that billed at $600 an hour. And that wasn't his main parnasa. His main parnasa was real estate. So he was doing okay. He was doing better than teachers don't make that much, by the way. So he was billing at, and he told me the kid was off the D, right? He was OTD, and the kid told me that his father didn't know the first thing about being a father, didn't know the first thing about chinuch, and he once walked over to his father. His father was sitting at the table. Father never gave him time, never spoke to him. He walked over to his father. He slapped a $20 bill on the table. He said, "Dad, can I talk to you for 7 minutes?" I would like to be on the receiving end of that, right? I'm sure his father probably said, "Listen, for 20 minutes, if you're 7 minutes, it's going to cost you $45, kid." So I had to do the math. You understand? That's a tragedy. There was another kid whose father, a 17-year-old kid, at the Pesach Seder, full family full of people at the Pesach Seder. And the father, at a certain point, they were missing. The kid stole. The 17-year-old took the afikomen. House full of guests. 17-year-old, he took the afikomen. So the father said to him, "Okay, Chaim will take the afikomen back." And he said, "You can have what would you like?" And the father was laughing. And the kid all of a sudden, he starts crying. 17-year-old kid. He said, "Dad, you know what I'd like for afikomen? Right now, in front of everybody, for the first time in my life, I'd like you to give me a hug and a kiss." So you got to be watching for it, and you got to be watching what it is. Terrible, right? It's just terrible. I'll tell you a good one in a second. We'll leave you in a good mood. Just realize these things happen. These are real. I've been in the trenches with the boys. These things happen. I've had a kid who told me, one of the first kids I met at Or Sameach. He was a Baal Tshuva, but his father was still a father. And when he told me that he's from, and he's not been in contact with his father for 3 years, his father didn't even know where he was. And his second shaila was asked when I started working in Kiruv. He asked me if after his father dies, he cannot say Kaddish. They don't teach you that in school. They teach you what you do if you forget Ya'aleh V'Yovo and Shemon Esrei. They don't say, "Oh, by the way, in case anybody hates his father." So the second question that I was asked, I said to him, "Listen, you better go speak to the halachic authority." Who told him no? He told him that if you really hate your father so much, you don't have to say. His father had beaten him as a kid. And he said, "You really don't have to say Kaddish." The end of the story was he took a hatchet and he turned his father's Lexus into a convertible, which was not the advice he had been given. It involved the police. It was another really, really wonderful story. Then I had another kid who came in. This kid was from a religious background, and I met the kid and I said, "Tell me about your background a little bit. What do your parents do?" He says, "Well, my mother's a teacher, and my father, Yamach Shemo, he was an accountant." So I said, "Why did you say Yamach Shemo?" He goes, "Well, isn't that what you say about somebody who died?" I said, "Well, some people, yeah, some people, but most of the time we say Zichrono Livracha." He goes, yeah, that's what I meant, Zichrono Livracha, Zichrono Livracha. I want to tell you something, getting Zichrono Livracha and Yamach Shemo mixed up is like getting a cheeseburger and kosher food mixed up. So then I realized what happened was the parents had a very messy divorce, and his brother, every time as she mentioned, "Well, your father, Yamach Shemo," so the kid thought that's what you say about it was they say about a father. But what came out at the end was that the father had also been abusive to him as a kid. And it was just interesting the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, that in the end his own son was saying that about his father. There was a little girl. There's a little girl who she went to Gan. A little girl, a 5-year-old girl. And she went to school, she went to Gan. And she had a birthday party, so her mother baked brownies for her. And they went to the Gan, they baked brownies. And they gave out the brownies to all the little girls, a birthday party, mulad, and some. And then the Ganenet goes over, she goes to the little Pini, and she takes away the brownie. So this Miriam's mother, who baked the brownie, said, "Why'd you take away the brownie for her?" She said, "Because her mother doesn't let her eat any sugar." She says, come on, give her the brownie. You gave it to her. You can't take it away from her. You can't take away a brownie from a kid. You gave it to her. She said, no. I did it once. I let her have it, and her mother gave me such an earful that forget about it. So, okay, Pnini's crying. All the little girls are eating their brownies. 5-year-old Pnini is crying. And then they all get up. They finish the brownies. They go into the play area in the other room. And at a certain point, the Ganenet notices that Pnini's not there. So she goes back to the first room. There's Pnini crawling around on the floor, eating the crumbs that fell from all the other girls' brownies. So parents can often be well-meaning, and parents are very strict and rigid because obviously you want her to be healthy, you don't want her to eat sugar and so on and so forth. They have to know as a parent, they have to go about it with a tremendous amount of COVID rush. Think about what your policy is going to have. When I go to shul on Shabbos, I see there's a kiddush. I could tell you the kids who feel that they're too restricted at home on the sugar. I could tell which are the kids. Because when there's a kiddush, they're the kids who have green frosting on their forehead because they're the ones who dove in first. Why? And then there's the mother. The kid comes home on Tu B'Shvat, and the kid gets a little sakit when he comes home from Gan. And I says, give me the thing. She pulls out all the chocolate. Here, you could have the dates and the Buxer, right? And the thing. We've all been there, right? Buxer is what the mother is like. Buxer and black licorice is for mothers, right? That's what because we don't eat that. So the mother takes. You know what's going to happen next time? The kid's going to come home. He's going to eat chocolate before he gets home. A parent has to know that if you're going to be too rigid and too strict with your kids, there's going to be a boomerang effect. How much should it be? Obviously, kids have to be controlled. Obviously, it can't be hefker. It's a very delicate balance and it's a very difficult job. But that's where parents, that's what Moshe was saying, leniency is going to work more. Leniency in communicating the love to the children is going to be much more efficient. Finally, Sarah Menu, she has a child. I'm sure Sarah Menu was the most wonderful mother in Klal Yisrael. And I'll tell you a beautiful story. There was a family that was off living. The father had to be away for a couple of years on business. So they're living in an area, there were no other Jewish families. Not only there were no frum families, no other Jewish families. They're all there by themselves in this other area. And Friday night, the mother sets the table. When she sets the table, she put an extra place setting. There's extra place setting in a chair. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, the kids finally noticed that their mommy keeps setting with an extra place setting in a chair. So they said, Mommy, why are you doing that? Why are you putting the extra chair by the table? So the mother said, look, for 2 years we have to be here. We can't have guests for Shabbos. But I don't want that we should forget how the importance of the mitzvah of Achnasas Orchim, so I'm setting the table that we should be able to have guests in the home. We'll remember when we go back to our community that we should have guests. I want to tell you something. Of all the guests they ever had in their home, a parent has to know, I think, that has more of an impact on the kid. Because the mother is doing something that's a little off the beaten path, and the kid remembers, wow, that was the chair for the invisible guest, right? And therefore the kid has now absorbed the message on the importance of Hafnasas Orchim. Finally, Sarah Menu, what's the first thing she does? First thing the Torah reports, the greatest mechaneches in history. She raised the Yitzchak who was willing to go and put his neck on the Mizbeach. The greatest mechaneches in history. That's quite an achievement. If you could get a son who happily is willing to die for HaKadosh Baruch Hu because his father wants to shech him, that's an achievement. That's the mother. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, his kids, all of Rav Shlomo Zalman Zatzal, all of his sons are massive Talmidei Chachamim. Somebody said to Rav Shlomo Zalman's son, one of his sons, how did your mother succeed? How did your father succeed in having sons who are such massive Talmidei Chachamim? So the son said, the Welt means the world at large, knows our father. We know our mother. That means it was the mama. It's the mama. The home is the mama. The men look like they're doing it. It's not. Most of the time, I'll tell you, I've said this to husbands. A guy comes over to me, says he's having a problem with one of his kids, this, that, and the other. I actually had to get to a point where he wasn't getting it because it was too thick up there. He wasn't getting it. I actually had to say to him, you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I had to say that to the father. You're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I was going easy on him because he's the whole problem, not part of the problem. What I tell men is, you want to succeed in chinuch? Get out of your wife's way and let her raise the children. That's the best thing you could do in chinuch. Just get out of her way. Let her raise the children. Do what she tells you to do. And don't be so smart and don't stick your nose into her business. A woman's given an instinct, a woman's given a chush, a woman's given every ability by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nowadays we have all these books are out there. Books on how to raise children, Your mother busy raising children, so when are you raising your children? They got all the books on marriage, getting on Shalom Bayis books, right? All these Shalom Bayis books, they all have the same. The 2 doves on the cover, right? 2 white doves with a ring in their mouth, right? They all look the same. And it should really be 2 vultures with baseball bats. That's what it should really be. That's what the Shalom Bayis book should be. And all the books on chinuch about how to raise children, this raise children that way. How come your parents didn't need the books? How come my parents didn't need the books? My father had one psychologist that he used. It was a left hand, right? And he maybe used it on me twice in my life. That's about it. Twice in my life I got punched by my father. Was a magnificent mechanech. Magnificent. He knew, where did he get it from? My mother was a magnificent mechaneches. Where'd you get it from? Nobody taught them. You were given an instinct. And my father, you know why he was a magnificent mechanech? Because he simply said to us, do what your mother says. That was the chinuch. The chinuch was, he used to say to me, I'm a buck private. Go ask the general. That's what my father used to say. The general is running the house. Of course, Baruch Hu gave you a koach. First thing Sarah Imenu does, what does she do? Throws Yishmael out of the house. The Torah doesn't say a word about her saying Kriya Shema with Yitzchak, Modeani, benching, nothing. What's the first thing she does? Get that Yishmael, that miserable Yishmael, out of the house. Ladies, I want to tell you something. You want to raise children with Yiras Shamayim, you want to raise children with Avas HaTorah, you've got a challenge that we didn't face. We are facing it. The previous generation did not face this challenge. The people who raised me did not face this challenge. They had other challenges. I have had this challenge, and your challenge is becoming even more severe. You got Yishmaels on every piece of electronic equipment available to man. Yishmael, Rashi says, was involved in Avodah Zorah, Gilui Arayis, and Shvichus Damim. We've got Avodah Zorah, Gilui Arayis, and Shvichus Damim on every piece of electronic equipment this big, except for that thing that you spin. Right? They came out with this spinner, right? The dinner spinner, or whatever it is that you call it, yeah, which I can't possibly understand. But my attitude is, this is great. At least people aren't watching anything. They're just spinning. So guys come to shiur, and they're spinning. Girls come to class. So I'm surprised nobody here is spinning anything, right? Everybody's spinning. You know, I took it away from one of the guys in yeshiva. I took it away. He was standing with the thing, and I walked over and I grabbed it from him, because I wanted to try it. I was spinning it. I said to him, where'd you get this? He said, I took it from one of my friends. I said, good, I took it from you. You know, I'm walking around with this spinner. It really is a lot of fun and genius, right? At least there's nothing on it. There's a Yishmael running around, lurking. Everywhere we go, there's a Yishmael. Our job nowadays, Sorry Mena comes along, and Sorry Mena says, get the Yishmael out of the house. It's your job as the mother. You have to be on guard to make sure if you want a home where your children are going to have Yiras Shamayim, your children are going to have Avas HaTorah, you have to be on the guard, because all of the positive parenting in the world could be wiped out, and it has been, unfortunately, in our days. Everything positive could be wiped out by the exposure to something no good. It's a difficult task that you have, and there's only one way to succeed. This was only one way to succeed for our parents, and this is true all the time. The only way to succeed is tefillah. You have to daven under the best of circumstances. If you have difficult kids, daven they should be good. If you have good kids, daven they should be better. And if you have great kids, daven they should stay that way. But you're going to have to daven. You have to pour your heart out in tefillah. But along with the davening is the ishtadlus. The ishtadlus is that we have to be on guard to make sure that those Yishmaels are not invading, those Yishmaels are not threatening the fiber of what creates a Torah home. If we absorb, if we ourselves have Avas HaTorah, if we ourselves grow in Yiras Shamayim, if we ourselves grow in our midos, if we ourselves grow in our chesed, that's hopefully what we will instill in our children. If anybody is interested in the booklet, I'll be out there for a second. I'm leaving if you're interested in getting the booklet. Okay. That's it. Go home.